Boker Tov, Shalom Aleichem, everyone. Welcome to the Aliyah day. We are in the second to the last Aliyah, or Parashah rather, of the book of Genesis, which is Vayigash. And in this Parashah, we have the meeting between the brothers, and more importantly, the revelation that this Zaphanaf Paneah, this king, as it were, of Egypt, is actually the brother Joseph, and this is where he reveals himself to his brothers. And so, obviously, this parashah is and particularly this aliyah, is really showing us what the end times are going to be like with respect to the salvation, as it were. And by salvation, I really want to use the term redemption, okay, of Israel, and why it's completely different than what most of you have been taught. What most of you have probably been taught is that, as Messianics or Christians, you have to go out there and get the Jews saved. You have to open their eyes, and the Jews have been blinded, and blah 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 blah. None of that's true. As it turns out, the Jewish people are going to come to know the Messiah because the Messiah is going to reveal himself to them. We also see something else in this, hence the title of today's discussion, and that is the clash of the titans. There's a lot that's written in various sources. We're not going to be able to get to all of it today. Pardon my reach. So I reach over here and grab. I forgot to even open up Mayim Loez here. But there's a lot of interesting insights about Judah and Joseph confronting each other. There's this understanding that it's really the two messiahs, Messiah ben Joseph and Messiah ben David, who are confronting each other in this climactic engagement. And there's a lot of esoteric ideas that are brought down about that. And so we see that in the meeting today, as we look at this exchange that happens between Joseph and Judah. What's also interesting, kind of as a side note, is, and Keturah has mentioned this over the years, a lot of the comic book characters, the superhero, let me put it that way, not so much comic book necessarily, but the superhero characters, a lot of them were created by Jewish people. Probably the most famous, of course, would be Superman, and the other would be Captain America. What's fascinating about that is that many superheroes, particularly Superman and Captain America, they have superhuman strength. And what's interesting is that is precisely what is written in the ancient writings about the 12 brothers, and not just limited to 12 brothers, but actually it was also Manasseh and Ephraim, that they had supernatural strength. They're really like strong, like superheroes, and that's part of the discussion that's happened. I'm trying to remember the exact insight, but there was. I'm gonna kind of paraphrase. I may get the details a little bit wrong in my memory, but there was an insight of where one of the brothers, I think it might have been Judah, kind of got up and decided he was going to kind of smack down Manasseh, who he didn't realize, of course, was his nephew. And I guess it was going to be something like a show of strength or something. You better listen to me, boy, or we'll actually start throwing things around here. And Manasseh ended up, slapping him down. And that was the beginning of the revelation. Like, wait a minute, no one has this kind of superhuman power but us, kind of a thing. But the reason I bring that up is just because of the interest related to that, and how some of these ideas probably ended up becoming ideas of the superhero comics and so forth. Just a little point of interest. Now, remember, everybody, we are raising money. Speaking of superheroes, we are raising money for our digital sign out front. I don't know what our latest update. Do we have a latest update, Keturah? We're still around 7,000, something like that. Probably a little bit more, maybe. I'm not sure. She may not have done the accounting yet. But anyway, we're there. We're getting close. So if you guys will just contribute, that'd be fantastic. And as I've been saying, I think we're going to have this wrapped up by the end of January, Bezrat Hashem. And as long as everybody continues to give, that'd be awesome. All right, she's going to get that later, so that's fantastic. So let's greet everybody and welcome as we get into our discussion here of the Clash of the Titans. And I get the opportunity to share with you an insight from Rabbi Monk that is really just phenomenal and has a lot of portent for our particular time and day and age and so forth. So good morning, Chris and Crystal. Glad you're here. Good morning, Ellie. Ahavat, Boker Tov to you. Johan, Boker Tov. Kim, good morning. Donna Jones, Boker Tov. Seth, good morning. Hey, Cindy Russell is on Facebook. Good morning, Cindy. Hope you and Tony are doing great and being blessed. Milka, good morning. Hope you and Daniel and little Zara are doing great. Takora, good morning. Greg, good morning. Nellie Grace, Boker Tov. There's Keturah, Boker Tov. Good morning, Glenn. Shoshana Brenner, Boker Tov to you. Amita, good morning to you. And Clayton, Boker Tov. Alita, Boker Tov. Cindy's in Maryland. I bet it's probably chilly there. Hope you guys are doing great, Cindy. Good morning to, who else do we have? Alita and Samuel and Ariela Rafaela and Sergio. Hope you and Johnny and your fam are doing great. Wendeley, Boker Tov. There's that name, Wendeley de los Santos. Such a great name. Good morning, Hepzibah and Gianna, Boker Tov. John, good morning. Lantern Lights, Boker Tov to you. Good morning, Michael. Tangi, Boker Tov. And who else do we have? Micaiah. Lori, Radomir from Scotland. And Brenda and Sarah Merritt. Hope you and Shane are doing fantastic. And Leah, hope you and Shmuel are doing great. And looks like we have maybe somebody new here. Abermenthal. Hope I pronounced that right. Welcome to you. Jen, good morning. Hope you and Russ are doing great. And did I miss anybody? Kathy, Boker Tov. Emmanuel from Nigeria, Africa. Good morning to you, sir. Beard of Prey, good morning. And Timothy and Hannah, good morning to you guys as well. Hope everybody's doing great and being blessed and having a great Hanukkah. Of course, we are. Good morning, Sarah Yochana. Good morning to you. Hope you, and there's Levi. I forgot to mention Levi. Good morning, Levi. Hope you and Levi are doing great. They're in beautiful Oregon. Michael Art, good morning to you. Yeah, so it is the what is this now? The 5th day of Hanukkah. So beautiful Hanukkah celebration. I hope you guys are having a great time. We're going to have a Hanukkah get together here on Wednesday night for Zot Hanukkah. And we're also going to utilize that opportunity to pray for people who are needing some healing in their bodies. And so that's going to be great. We're looking forward to that. Baruch HaShem. May HaShem anoint that time. So diving into the Aliyah here, Parashah Vayigash. So we have the brothers who've they brought Benjamin. They came down. They saw. They left. Yosef put a goblet into Benjamin's knapsack or saddlebag or what have you, and it was a cup of divination. We talked all about this in the last Aliyah, and we related that back to Rachel and so forth, and the tikkun that may have been made there. And it's all it was all, I think, very interesting and something for you to go back and listen to. But now Joseph has decided, he's telling the brothers, look, I'm just going to take Benjamin to be my slave. And you guys are free to go. But he stole the cup of divination. Therefore, he's going to be the slave. And obviously, this is a test, right? He wants to see, since they were willing to sell him into slavery, will the brothers be willing to sell Benjamin into slavery? Now, why Benjamin? Well, because Benjamin is Joseph's full brother. He's the son of Rachel and also Jacob. There's only two brothers that share that distinction, and that, of course, is Joseph and Benjamin. So the idea being that as far as they're concerned, Joseph is dead. So there's nothing they can do about that. But will they still have that level of animosity towards Benjamin? And as it turns out, not only do they not have that level of animosity, and I should also say, by the way, not just a level of animosity towards a brother, but also a level of disregard, of lack of concern towards the father, to Jacob. But not only do they express they do not have that, they don't possess that. They've made tikkun, or made teshuvah. But it takes a step further. Here we see Judah, who represents Messiah ben David. We see him willing to lay down his life for Benjamin. So it goes beyond, hey, we're not willing to sell him into slavery or allow him to be a slave, but we're actually, I want to take his place. And then this confrontation is also interpreted to mean, not only am I willing to take his place, but if you don't allow me to take his place, then I'm going to, this is Judah talking to Joseph, who he thinks, by the way, is the king of Egypt. I'm going to kill you. Judah's had enough. Judah's like, look, I'm going to kill you. Now, why is that so significant? Well, aside from the fact that, that's a pretty incredible threat, but you have to understand, he's threatening, he's getting up, as they say nowadays colloquially, he's getting up in the grill of the king of Egypt. In other words, what Joseph is seeing here is that the brother's dedication is significant. Good morning, Chanel, Thelma, and Mohammed. Baruch HaShem. Good morning, Rebbe Singh. Yeah, so obviously you can see the significance, because look, Judah's taking his life in his own hands. He's taking the life already. Joseph has accused these brothers of being spies. So this is a very significant move, is what I'm trying to say. There's a lot going on here, but I want to begin and dive in with the Kel Tumash that gives an introduction to Vayigash, because it says some things here that are pretty interesting as we're trying to reconcile the Messiah the role of Messiah ben Yosef, the role of Messiah ben David. A lot of people do not realize that there are two Messiahs. Of course, there one Messiah. Okay. But there's an interplay here. We're trying to discern, all of us are trying to discern, what is the ultimate plan of God. We're living in end times and so forth. Everybody agrees that we're living in an end time world. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean that we have a year left? I kind of hope so. Why do you hope so? Well, because, we all need to live in the world to come. That's the ultimate goal. But anyway, it could be a year, could be 10 years, could be 50 years. But in any case, it's still the end times, no matter what. But this is what the Kel Tumash says. It says, in Parashat Vayigash, we witness the reconciliation between Joseph and his brothers and the reunion between Joseph and his father Jacob. The dramatic tension that began in Parashat Vayeshev is now resolved. The chosen family is once again whole, and Jacob can finally look forward to devoting the remainder of his life to preparing them for their destiny, becoming the nation worthy of receiving the Torah, their tool and guidebook for fulfilling the ultimate goal of creation. Good morning, Andrew. Good morning. Transforming the world into God's intended home. So let me just pause here and say that one of the primary purposes of the Torah, of the law of Moshe, is to transform the world into a home for God. Why? Well, because that was the original situation. The original situation in the Garden of Eden was that God and man basically dwelled together, as it were. And this is the fallacy and the falsehood and the mistake of Christianity. Christianity is all focused on the hereafter. And to a very large degree, what we do in this life is kind of like, eh. Now, some will disagree with me, and rightfully so, because Christians would say, no, 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 you have to be a good person and a moral life and so forth and so on. And, don't drink or chew or go with girls that do. And I understand that. I get that, right? But that's really kind of lame, actually, because I've been a Christian. Trust me, I know this. It's pretty much like, it's not really, you're not really focused on this life. Okay. Not really. You're in the world and not of the world, which by the way is a Jewish concept. But Judaism seeks, the big difference is that Judaism seeks to sanctify this life. Okay. And to bring the Shekinah down into this life. Therefore, we sanctify what we eat. We sanctify what we wear. We sanctify where we live. We sanctify the time, all of which, by the way, are elements of creation. And of course, we sanctify the person, not just the spiritual person, but the physical person as well. Christianity cares nothing about that. It just, it's kind of a, just make it through by being a good person. And then when you die, you're going to go to heaven. And by the way, it doesn't even matter because, Christ is going to cover all your sins anyway. So eat what you want, wear what you want, go where you want. This is why today in the church, you have women wearing mini skirts and stilettos, singing praise and worship songs on Sunday morning. This is why that's the case. Okay. So look, the point here is that the Torah is intended to transform the world into God's home, to bring the God into the world. Now you can understand now why the Satan would not want this to happen. Why? Because this is his world. It's the world he's been given. The last thing he wants is for God to come into his domain. Good morning, David. Now you can understand why the Satan would create a doctrine that basically yexnade. I just made that up. The law of Moses. Why? Because the last thing he wants is the Shekinah to come into his crib. I'm being very a crib up in your grill. What's gotten into me today? I don't even know. Anyway, it says, in addition, there is a significant subplot that is also resolved in this parasha, the ideological conflict between Joseph on the one hand and his brothers, led by Judah, on the other. So we see here another point of interest. And that is that there is a conflict between Joseph and his brothers. Can we just say that? Thanks, Spirit, I pray. Thank you, Sergio. There is a tension. There's a conflict between the Messiah ben Joseph and his brothers. And that's something else I want to point out as we're looking at all the different patterns, which we've been doing now for a couple of weeks. They're astounding. But there's a conflict. There's a tension. There was tension between Yeshua and his brothers. They had a different worldview, a different point of view. It does not mean that the brothers are wholesale wrong. It just means that there was a tension, there was a conflict. So it goes on to say here, the spiritual conflict between Joseph and Judah centered around whose approach would be more effective in serving to cause the dissemination of divine consciousness. In other words, who has a better plan at bringing down divine consciousness into the world? Now, before I read further and get into this point of view, let me just kind of throw this out there. I am of the opinion that the Jewish mission is to make Gentiles Jews. And I believe, looking at it completely logically and rationally, that would bring divine consciousness into the world. It's a very simple formula. It's not complicated. Let's just say, for example, that we were successful at making, let's just throw out a number. Let's say that we were successful, maybe so, at causing, if you will, 50,000 people in Tarrant County, to our county here, to become Lapid Jews. 50,000. Okay. By the way, in this county, there's something to the effect of 2.2 million. Okay, people. But suppose that we were able to make 50,000 converts. What would that mean? Well, I can promise you that with 50,000 people, suddenly you would have a market that would call for kosher restaurants, kosher markets, more synagogues, more Jewish observance, more Jewish and Torah-centered consciousness. More people would interact with Jewish people. I mean, I met a gentleman the other day who came over to our facility to do some work. Very nice man, very strong Christian, loves God with his whole heart. And he was telling me that he went to Florida, to Miami, and that was the first time in his 30 years of life that he had ever encountered a Jew. Now, he has encountered Jews before, but of course they're not observant, so he didn't know it. But the point, in fact, is you have a Christian man who has never met a Jew before. He's like 30 years old, never met a Jew before until he went to Florida. But what if that happened in Tarrant County? The point being is, would that not bring divine consciousness into our county? Now, the other idea on the Jewish side of the fence is we only want to get Jews to become observant, which is good luck. They've been trying that for decades. Hasn't worked. And all these Gentiles who want to become Jews, we want to, redirect them to become Noahides, which basically means just a Gentile. There's no change. There's no difference between a Noahide and a Gentile. Zero difference. Okay. And anyway, so how does that change things? If you suppose you had 50,000 Noahides in Tarrant County, what difference would that make? How would it change Tarrant County? How would it bring divine consciousness into Tarrant County? Answer: it wouldn't at all. So you see what I'm saying? So there's a conflict here. There's a difference of opinion, and the issue is, the conflict is, how do we bring God into the world? That's the point I'm trying to make. Okay. All right. Good morning, Macy. Good to see you. So it says here, Joseph favored engaging the world proactively. Hello. Utilizing its institutions, culture, technology, and emotional energy for holy purposes. His brothers, led by Judah, preferred to shun the world and its attendant enticements and pitfalls, opting instead to devote themselves to the ongoing task of augmenting their own holiness, thereby inspiring the rest of the world to eventually join them and emulate them. Well, the problem with that is, that sounds good on paper, but it doesn't work good in reality. If you're tucked away in a cave somewhere, if you're tucked away in a yeshiva studying Torah 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you never have contact with the outside world, it's really difficult for the outside world to be inspired by your holiness. Right? It's not complicated, but let me break it down for you. The reason it's difficult for them to be inspired by your holiness is because they never see your holiness, because you're never around them. Meanwhile, all the institutions, the schools, the entertainment industry, the restaurants, the businesses go to hell in a handbasket, and they have the influence over everybody else. And by the way, you have to, if you want to eat, go and be involved in those institutions, and therefore you're being influenced. So instead of you influencing them and utilizing them, they're influencing you. Being insulary has never attracted anybody. And let me ask you, so you say that's not true, isn't it? How many of you wanted to be a monk? How many of you, maybe there's somebody out there, could be. I know Zach and Rayford for a while spent time as a monk. How many of you have ever been, not really, I just made that up, but how many of you have ever been inspired to say, you know what? I think I'd like to be a monk. Glenn thought about it. Well, there you go, Glenn. You've proved me wrong. Anybody? Now, everybody knows about monks. Does anybody ever want to be one? So you see, there you go. Nellie Grace wanted to be a nun as a little girl. Sergio wants to be a part-time monk. I'm not talking about socially recluse. I'm talking about being a monk. Anyway, point is that living in a cave does not inspire people to want to do anything, holy. So how do we have an influence in the world? According to Joseph's idea, we have to go out and actually inspire holiness into these institutions. What's interesting is you could make the case that Judaism chose Judah's idea, but actually not. I mean, in practice, yes, but in theory, no. Why do I say that? Because in Judaism, the idea is tikkun olam. Tikkun olam. Tikkun olam is repairing the world. And the idea in Judaism of tikkun olam naturally requires the Jew to be involved in the world. Not in a worldly way, but to be involved in the world. So on the one hand, in practice as Jews, we've decided to be recluses. But it's contrary to our self-defined mission of tikkun olam. Does this make sense? Isolation does not make you a monk. If you're not walking around wearing a burlap sack, living in a monastery, eating bread and drinking unfiltered well water, you're not a monk. Anyway, I digress. You see what happens? We mentioned one little thing about monks and everybody just goes crazy. Rebbetzin would look great in a burlap sack, by the way. She looks great in everything, to include burlap sacks. Just saying. Stale bread at that, Seth. It's not even if you're eating fresh bread, that's way too much indulgence. The bread at least has to be at minimum a week old, probably a little bit green, but mostly at least a week minimum. So it says here, although each of these approaches possess its unique advantages, Jacob clearly preferred Joseph's, as we have seen. Now, this is interesting because now it's saying that the father preferred Joseph's approach. That's an interesting insight. It goes on to say, though, that but while Jacob was correct in recognizing that Joseph's approach is more vital in winning the struggle against the world's anti-divine bias, Judah's approach is just as essential and is, in fact, complementary to Joseph. So what we're going to see, by the way, as we go through this, is that both approaches have their extreme points of view, and they also have their advantages. And these, in other words, these two approaches are going to eventually become combined into the ultimate approach, right? So in other words, there's positives on both sides. Cindy Russell said on Facebook, so to monks, eating food is a weakness. That is definitely not my approach to life. For me, eating food is a mission. It's a mitzvah, actually. Yeah, it's a mitzvah. Anyway, enough about that. So it says here, the shortcomings in Joseph's approach is that it leaves too much room for vain glory. That's a shortcoming indeed, sure. No matter how great our dedication to God and to carrying out the mission with which he entrusted us, the fact that we must employ our own intelligence, creativity, cunning, initiative, and courage to accomplish our lofty goals can leave us with an inflated sense of self-satisfaction. That's true. That's the risk. The risk of getting out in the world and turning the world into a holy place is that you might become You might self-indulge, gratification, etc. That's the risk. But listen, with any great endeavor requires risk. Okay, there are some people who are risk averse, and those people will never be successful. Unfortunately, you cannot be risk adverse and be successful. And so it takes risk, and risk is a good thing within reason. Of course, we don't do things that are foolishly risky, but I'm talking about within reason. The reason that the business CEO or the business owner, the reason that they get a bigger paycheck than the person who works in the mailroom is because that CEO or that business owner is taking all the risk. And the person who works in a mailroom, although they have an honorable and admirable job, they have no risk. Okay? That's the difference. That's the idea. That's why socialism is a complete failure. You know, everybody needs to make the same and so forth and so on. That's nonsense. You know, they did a thing at the university with all these college students. They believed in socialism, equal outcomes. And so they said, okay, great. So here's the deal. We're going to take from your GPA and we're going to give some, not all, of course, but some of your GPA to other students in your class so that they can have the same type of GPA that you're going to have. Of course, naturally, since we're taking from your GPA, it's going to lower your GPA. You won't fail, but you'll have a lower one, but it will have an equal outcome to the other people. And of course, all those college students were like, no way, because I take risk in that I study and I don't indulge in other things. And I spend time studying. So it's not fair that somebody who doesn't do that, who's not taking that kind of risk, should have part of my GPA. And they said, oh, really? So you see? So it goes on to say here, where did I leave off? Yes. Aside from its intrinsic detrimental effect on our spiritual growth and our relationship with God, this self-satisfaction also thwarts our chances of success, it says, in disseminating divine consciousness. For even an ever so subtle presence of ego within our own psyche prevents us from recognizing it in our environment and eradicating it. That's true. So ego is a potential threat. That's why, we have to strive to tamp down our ego. Although ego in and of itself is not completely bad. This is why Rabbi Twersky, a rabbi and psychiatrist of blessed memory, talked about one of the, in his opinion, as a professional psychiatrist, the greatest problem with our society, in his opinion, was that people have low self-esteem. Okay. And that people need to have healthy self-esteem, not arrogance, not inordinate pride. At the same time, not self-deprecation and self-hating and self-loathing. Good, you're not a loser, but you're also not God gifts to humanity either, right? You need to have a healthy self-esteem. Well, that requires ego. So you need to have a healthy ego. In our day and age, I've talked about this before. A lot of people, by the way, mistake confidence for arrogance. If you talk, my stepfather is a retired Air Force fighter pilot and a retired commercial airline pilot. If I asked him, hey, Reese, do you think you're pretty good at flying a plane? And if he said to me, you know what? I am. I'm actually really good at flying planes. That's not arrogance. That's called confidence based upon his skill set. And you, ladies and gentlemen, you, ma'am, sir, need to have a healthy confidence in whatever it is that you're good at. and be okay with articulating that. It's not arrogance. And ladies and gentlemen, if you meet somebody who's confident, don't call it arrogance. And here's another reason why people do this is because so few people are confident, because they have low self-esteem. So therefore, whenever they see somebody who's confident, they automatically think they're arrogant. They're not arrogant, they're confident. Now, there are people who are arrogant, and that's disgusting, and nobody likes that. But don't be afraid to be confident, and don't mistake confidence for arrogance or arrogance for confidence. Okay? Be comfortable in your own skin. And understand, by the way, you may be great at something, but not great at something else. And that's okay. That's okay. I am not good at all at, construction type stuff. It's not my deal. I can tear things up. If you need my help on a remodeling job, give me a sledgehammer. I'm really, really good at that. But when it comes to making cabinets and those kind of things, not so much. And I'm okay with that. Doesn't bother me a bit. Some guys go to Home Depot or Lowe's and they want all the power tools. I need a screwdriver. That's pretty much all I need. And a hammer. That's about it. And I'm okay with that. Totally okay with it. And you need to be okay with whatever it is you're good at, and also be okay with whatever it is you're not good at, because we're not good at everything, right? Except for the Rebbe Singer. But other than that, mere mortals, not so much. Okay. All right. So you okay with your psychological lesson? All right. Very good. So it goes on to say here, this was the inner spiritual reason, as we will see, why Joseph was unable to appropriate the land of the idolatrous priests when he acquired ownership of the entire kingdom of Egypt. So saying that, it's bringing down why Joseph was not entirely successful at, what he was trying to do, which, by the way, was trying to turn the entire Gentile world into a Jewish world. Okay, which is significant. What does that tell us? It tells us that Joseph knew that this was the ultimate goal of Jews, was to make the whole world Jewish, which is the goal, which is why there was a faith system developed to do just not that. Okay, notice the two systems. Like, you tell people, you need to become Jewish, and we don't have to convert to be saved. Of course, I taught this before, but people don't actually believe that. You do have to convert to be saved. You just have to convert to Christianity. But the point is there's this tension. You have to be Jewish. No, I don't. Yes, you do. No, I don't. Why is there a tension? Because one is the plan of God. Now, which one is the plan of God? Well, we have to examine the scriptures for that. And what we find is, in the scriptures, everybody who wasn't Jewish became Jewish. That's what we find. Okay? So it says Judah, in contrast, by the way, nobody who was a Jew became not Jewish in the scriptures. You don't ever see the reverse. So you always see Gentiles becoming Jews, but you never see the reverse. There's no biblical hero who had been Jewish and then wasn't. But the reverse is true. Okay. Somebody silence Dark Prince there. We're not interested in your nonsense. If you could do that, it'd be great. Thanks, guys. All right. So Judah, in contrast, personified the selfless aspirations to become absorbed into the presence of God. When we adopt his attitude, our interactions with the world are characterized by self-sacrifice, the devotion to God's will, with no thought of personal aggrandizement nor concern over possible personal repercussions. The synthesis of Judah's selflessness and Joseph's prowess thus enables us to exercise all of our God-given gifts without falling prey to pernicious self-satisfaction. In other words, the point is we have to have balance here. That's really what it's kind of getting at. So it says, this is why this parashah entitled Vayigash, and he approached, referring to how Judah approached Joseph in order to ensure success in our mission, we as Josephs must allow ourselves to be approached and complimented by Judas. Okay, so this long introduction was to say that this is why you need the two messiahs. You have to have the Messiah who suffers, and you have to have the Messiah who rules and reigns. But beyond that, you have to have the synthesis between the two visions. There's a vision of Joseph who's like, let's get out there, let's turn the world into God's home, let's utilize the institutions and so forth. And then there's Judah who's like, well, let's kind of work on our own holiness and kind of stay in our proverbial cave. And both of those have their problems and both of those have their extremes. But now with the two Messiahs coming together, we need to synthesize those two approach. Now that brings us to our day and age. And what does this portend for us? Well, we can see that in these end times, what are we seeing? We're seeing people who believe in the Messiah, Yeshua, who told us to go out and preach this gospel to the nations, teaching them to follow the commandments. So we see that. We see this idea from the Messiah ben Yosef that we need to go out and turn the world into a home for God. But now we're drawing in the spirit, if you will, of the Messiah ben David from Judah, if you will, from the tribe of Judah, which, by the way, as we see in our comments, represents all the other tribes as well, not just one tribe, okay? And we're seeing that inner holiness, that observance of the Torah, that following that Torah, the commitment to Torah is what we need in order to accomplish that mission. Whereas before it was just all about go teach the nations to believe in God, but don't teach the nations to be godly. And the definition of godliness is Torah keeping. Okay. So what we're seeing in these end times, what I'm trying to say is we're seeing those two realities coming together where Torah is being connected to the mission of, let's say, evangelism. And by the way, that's what this gospel is. The gospel that has been taught here up until this point is not the gospel. It's not this gospel. It's a gospel, but it's not this gospel. That's why I believe, and we'll conclude with this. Tomorrow we're going to come to the point at which Joseph reveals himself, and I don't want to get into that today because I want to give that its own attention because it's really an important. There's lots of important insights related to that we need to really spend some time on. But let me just conclude by saying that there's a reason why the Messiah said this gospel, okay? Because he was making an emphatic statement that there is a gospel that when it is preached to the ends of the earth, then the end will come. Now, I'm of the opinion, and I'm biased, of course, because I'm me and you're you and we're us, that this gospel that he's talking about is the Lapid gospel. End of our Aliyah today. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. Good to see everybody on YouTube and Facebook. So glad you guys are here and been with me. Please be sure and donate to our digital sign campaign. That will be fantastic. Thank you so much for doing that. Have a great Hanukkah. We're going to light the Hanukkah again tonight. It'll be the 6th lighting. And then, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll get into the discussion of Joseph revealing himself to his brothers and Bezrat Hashem. It will be inspirational and meaningful. God bless all of you. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Until then, have a great and amazing day.